Okay. Meeting is now streaming live on Facebook. We did it. Fantastic. All right, Chris, how's it going, man? Thank you so much for doing this. Hi, Facebook. Most of you guys know me already, but we'll just get into it really quick. My name is Greg Carson. I'm a realtor out here in Los Angeles, California. My goal for these Facebook talks is to bring millennials and artists more information about investing, home ownership, a pathway to financial freedom, all that good stuff. I'm joined by my good friend Chris. He and I met at a an investing group in Pasadena where we got to talking. He actually took me out to Habitat, which was to Habitat Burger, and he bought me a meal, so I owe you a meal. He was really cool. He talked to me a long time about what he does, and the information I think is super, super important for everyone to know. And so here we are, and hopefully you find this information super useful as well. Chris, thank you so much for joining us. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Thank you for having me on, Greg. I appreciate it, and always great to catch up. Yeah, we had a nice burger hangout, and I'll take you up on those tacos once the once this quarantine passes.
You got
So my background is actually in television. I'm an editor. I've been in the Hollywood industry for about 15 years at this point. Shows all the way from Duck Dynasty to Making the Band at MTV. I did America's Next Top Model. I've been working for Amazon for the last year or so. So I've been around and spent a lot of my time creating television. And when I moved here to LA, I just wanted to work for MTV, and I wanted to marry music and TV because I loved editing. I loved creating videos, but I also love music. I'm also a drummer or a musician. So unfortunately for me, by the time I got to LA, I did get that MTV job, but shortly after, most of the music disappeared from music and it became just MTV. So, but fortunately, I learned how to tell stories and craft stories as an editor, and I've been doing that ever since.
Cool, man. So what are you currently working on with Amazon?
I'm currently working on a show called The Pack, which comes out in the fall, I believe. And we are editing straight through this quarantine. We have home edit bays set up. Last year, I just did a show called Making the Cut for Amazon as well, which is, we're going to award season, so we're fingers crossed that we'll be in the running there. And Making the Cut is actually coming back for a second season, so I'll be moving on from The Pack onto that. So, and unfortunately, I can't tell you too much about The Pack because it's brand new, not out yet. I don't think it's been announced yet. So it's about all I can tell you on that.
Okay, fair
Not
enough.
to be too cryptic, but it's kind of like The Amazing Race-ish.
Cool. Yeah, it's I've seen like Making the Cut like pop up on my Facebook, and every time it does, I'm like, I know the guy who did that, and it's
Yeah.
very exciting for me. So you and I specifically met at a real estate convention, not a convention, but a meetup group. And it was kind of like, oh, hey, you work in the entertainment industry. I also work in the entertainment industry. And I felt like a little bit of a kinship. But why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do in real estate and how you got there eventually?
Sure. I mean, in the Hollywood world and editing and producing, I've been around a while and I have a pretty high status there. I get paid pretty well. I love what I do. I'm in demand. I work when I want, and usually I'm booked out a couple of shows in advance. So that's a great life. And I love my life as an editor. I love the creativity. But editing and television in general is very much money on demand, but it doesn't have very much of a long-term path, right? You just keep working. If you don't work, you don't get paid. If you work next week, you get paid. If you don't work next week, you don't get paid. There's no such thing as paid time off. There's no sick time. There's no healthcare benefits. There's no, you get 2 weeks vacation a year. It's nothing. It's all freelance in my specific world. So I realized that when my wife and I got pregnant with our son years ago, I'm like, look, this is fine for the immediate term, but if I ever want to not have to show up to work, I got to figure something out. And I've always invested in the stock market and had money in, Wall Street. And I figured there's got to be some way to create streams of income, not just piles of money. So what I did is I started learning and researching about real estate. And do you want the short version now, and then you want to unpack it, or do you want me to just go into the long version? What do you want?
Let's go into the short version for now.
Okay, so I started by buying single family homes. I thought that that was going to be the path where I just keep buying homes and rent them out. And I started buying out of state, not in California, because I live in Manhattan Beach.
Mhm.
And then from there, I transitioned into passively investing in apartment complexes, which are much larger. They operate more as a business. And then eventually got into actively investing in apartment complexes and running what are called syndications, which are essentially bringing groups of people together to buy assets like apartment complexes. I bring groups of passive investors who want to be owners in an apartment complex, but they don't want to deal with the work of owning an apartment complex. So that's where I'm at now. So I started a company called Amity Cash Flow. Amity means friendship. My goal was really to help my friends who are in the TV industry that want to have that same goal that I have that you're talking about, financial freedom. They want passive income, but they want to just do their job in television, but they don't have a lot of time to invest in real estate. And I figured, well, look, I'm doing real estate and TV. Let me help my friends come along the way. So that's why I started my company. And now what we do is we buy apartment complexes, and I bring my friends together and we invest as groups, and they get to enjoy the benefits of passive ownership, and they get checks in their mailbox every quarter.
Cool, man. So let me make sure and reiterate that I understand this. So
Sure.
syndication essentially means you, as Chris, finding a building, an apartment complex, and you're like, hey, I got this apartment complex that can bring us some cash flow. Who's interested? And you reach out to your friends, and your friends are then like, yes, let me give you X amount of money, and then they can continue acting, directing, editing, and just get a cash in the check and to little to no work on their end.
That's exactly the case. Yeah. So, I mean, think of on the simple side. If you wanted to buy a house, just you yourself, you wanted to
Okay.
buy a investment property, Greg can go out and buy his own house. Let's say you step it up and you want a bigger house that rents for more. You and I could buy it together as just a partnership, right? We could just sign a kind of legal document saying we are 50-50 partners. We each put in the money. Well, what happens when you exponentially make that bigger? We're going to buy a 200 unit property that's $20 million, right? No longer can two people do it, or maybe even four people. So you have to get groups of people together. And if you go out and you try to find, let's say, 50 people that are all actively want to be involved and they each want to have their own little say on what happens, it's not going to work. So what you do is you have someone at the helm, a driver, and they're going to get a bunch of investors who don't really want to be in charge of it. They want to be the money side of it, the equity, but they don't want this. They don't want the responsibility. They want to be a passive owner, but they are a co-owner, just like when you and I were going to buy that house and be 50-50 owners. Well, if you put in 25, 50, $100,000, you get a percentage share of the apartment complex. So you're a small piece of the whole. So when that apartment complex spits out profit every quarter, you get your percentage share of ownership. So it's really a great way to be a passive investor and own real estate and diversify your portfolio. Maybe you have some money in the stock market and you want to have some money in cash and you want to have some money invested in real estate. This is a great way where you don't have to, like you said, it's really hands off. Once you decide you like the property and you like the operator, then it's really all about writing the check, and then you get to sit back. And as long as you trusted the right person and that property does well and performs, then you'll get paid out every quarter. Now, obviously, it's an investment, and things can go up and down, and coronavirus can happen, things like that. But the idea is that yes, it's a passive, hands-off way to invest in real estate, and it's called a syndication.
Right on. Cool. So I linked Chris's company's URL down in the comment. So if you want to check out his website, you can do that. He's also got some podcasts. You can sign up for his newsletter. I get his newsletter. It's a lot of great information on there. Highly recommend it. Do you also, I remember we met at a meetup group, but do you also, I remember you also run one as well, right?
I do. I run a meetup in Manhattan Beach. It's called multifamilymasters.com. All one word,
And I'll link
multifamilymasters.com.
that, guys.
Thanks. And we actually have chapters all over the country. It's a nationwide organization that started here in the South Bay of Manhattan Beach. And so me and a buddy of mine named Powell, we run a meetup that happens every month in Manhattan Beach. We've been actually doing that virtual for the last 3 months on Zoom. So we do those usually once a month, and we bring in guests just like this and talk about the industry. It's exclusively focused on multifamily. We don't talk about single families or buying your own home. This is all about investing, owning multifamily, which is apartment buildings, and how to do that successfully.
Cool. And then, do you also invest in the stock market still, or are you mostly focusing on like these large indications and that's your bread and butter?
So I would say I passively invest in the stock market and I actively invest in real estate. So I do have managed accounts invested in the stock market,
Hmm.
but it's not something that I'm day trading and buying, hand picking stocks. I do have some of that, but I would not call myself a stock expert at all. You want stock advice? Don't ask me.
Okay, fair enough.
I got people I can refer you to, right? And say, hey, talk to
Okay,
him.
sounds good. So what is it about real estate that like, other than like the cash flow and the possibility of passive income, what is it that excites you about it? What is it that drew you to it? And ultimately, like why this strategy versus Wall Street or gold or oil or whatever?
Sure. I mean, it's a great question. And I think a lot of people want me to tell them that this is the only way, right? This is the only way to make money. And it's not. There's a million ways to make money out there. I have chosen this way. That doesn't mean it's the only way. People often ask me, why aren't you buying duplexes and threeplexes and just a bunch of single families? I think that's a great idea. And I go, I think that's a great idea too. Go ahead and do it. It's not wrong. It's one way to do it. I in real estate in general, I like over the stock market because I feel like the stock market is a little bit more gambling. It goes up and down, and it's a lot of people have their money invested in it, and it is the way the world works. But I feel like real estate is one of the hierarchy of needs in that people need somewhere to live. They need to pay rent. They need to have apartments. Not everybody needs apartments. Plenty of people buy their own house. Plenty of people buy small places, but apartments are kind of the lowest common denominator that across the board, there will always be a need for apartments. And I want to own things that people need because I feel like that's the best way to guarantee, as much as I can guarantee, nothing in life is guaranteed, as much as I can guarantee cash flow because people will need apartments. If I buy in the right area where there's enough people and the economy is growing and the population is growing, there's always going to be a need for apartments. And if I can own the apartments, someone will always come along and pay rent. Now, the amount of cash flow and the percentage returns can go up and down depending on extreme, supply and demand. But at the bare minimum, we're going to have that apartment complex filled, and they're going to be paying down our mortgage. So,
Sure.
but my general overall idea was not that complicated. It was really my life currently before all this was I was just trying to amass piles of money. And then I hope it's enough that when I want to quote unquote retire, I just start chipping away at it and hope that I have enough that when I die, I still have enough, maybe a little bit to give over. But what I realized is that if I can buy streams of income, it's a pretty simple concept. I can go to Hawaii for a month and I can use all that money. And then guess what happens on the first of next month? Boop, it fills up again, right?
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
I can
Yeah.
go to Hawaii, I can burn all that money. And the first of next month, everyone pays rent, boop, it fills up again. So I like the idea of streams of income because I can take those, as long as I'm building up, I can buy more streams of income and more
Right.
streams of income and more streams of income. And people do that now by buying an Amazon store. That's one stream of income. They have their job. They have some, dividend producing stocks. But the minute I put my money all in the stock market and my Tesla shares go up, great. But if I need 10 grand and I sell off some of my Tesla shares, I just have less shares now. And even if they go up in value, once I sell one, I have less shares and they have to go up in value. I just keep chipping away at it. Whereas
Right.
every time I use money for my real estate, it's just going to refill again next month. So I also figured that that was a great way to set up my family. If anything were to happen to me, set up my son. If anything happened to me, set up my family around me. Look, let's say next month my mom needs some money. Here's a check. Oh, I don't know if I'll take it. Seriously, next month, guess what? Another check's going to come in, right? And this all happens while I'm also working in television. So it's a way to set up multiple streams. And to me, that creates a sense of security. It creates a well rounded um, infrastructure of finance. Probably
Cool.
a long answer to your question, but
No, no, no. I love that actually. I like the explanation of the hierarchy of needs. Like that is always going to be needed. People are going to need a roof over their heads, and then along with like the bubble metaphor, I love that. It's super relatable. So typically, when you look for these large apartment complex, how how are you picking the areas that you're looking? What states are you normally buying in? What's step number one?
step number one, well, there's a couple of, before you even get to there, it's do you want to be actively involved or passively involved, right?
Let's
If
just
you
say
want to,
passively for now.
right. So if you want to be passively involved, what you're looking for is a city that, because you're not going to be operating it, right? You can make money in any market in the whole country, pretty much. You could buy in the most random little city in Montana or Wyoming where there's no one for 20 miles from you. But if you have a house and it's rented for 10 years in a row, you're making money, right? It's not like a magic formula to finding the right spot. But for me, what I'm trying to do is find large cities that still cash flow and have appreciation. So there's typically this kind of balancing act in real estate of, if you have a high cash flow, it probably won't appreciate a lot. But if you have a lot of appreciation, it's not going to cash flow a lot. Los Angeles is a great example of that. It will appreciate over here, but you're not going to cash flow. If you buy a property, you might even be underwater if you're renting it out. Your
Mm,
mortgage will be more than what your rent is. But over time, the appreciation will kick in where if you sell it, you make all that money back up. Well, for me, I'd rather have cash flow because, like I said, I want those streams of income. So cash flow means my mortgage is less than my rent, mortgage plus expenses. So some cities across the country have a good balance where pretty solid cash flow and pretty solid appreciation. So I buy in markets like Texas, Florida. I had early on, I had a little bit more in the Midwest in Tennessee. I have property in Kentucky, but I want large cities that are growing in population and also have, every city's got its pockets, but I want to make sure that I know the city well enough, or I have a partner on the deal that knows the city well enough to pick out the areas. Like this area is growing, right? It's got a whole new strip mall with a new Starbucks in there and a Whole Foods up the street. Very different than this corner of the city where there's kind of just nothing. It's an empty neighborhood and a liquor store, right? There's just different amounts of growth that are going to happen in those areas of the city. So I'm looking for population growth. I'm looking for a decent school system. I'm looking for boots on the ground, someone there that knows the cities well enough that they can discern what's a good street. I mean, if you're in Los Angeles and you drive through Silver Lake, some of the streets are great. Some of
yeah.
them are awful. You wouldn't want to
Yeah.
live 2 blocks over, right? You have to be that specific. So on the base level, is the population growing? Yes. Are rents traditionally growing? Yes. Are home values going up? Are median incomes slowly moving up? These are all things that are pretty simple to Google. You can Google population Cleveland, Ohio, population Columbus, Ohio, and see what they're doing. Cleveland's got a downward trend. Columbus has got an upward trend. If you're going to own property, I want to own property where the population's growing because that's going to create demand for basic common needs like grocery stores and apartments.
Sure. Yeah.
So, yeah, so as a passive investor, you want to make sure that whoever's operating the apartments can tell you why you're buying in this area, why we're buying in this part of Texas. I own property in San Antonio and Jacksonville. San Antonio, for example, Dallas, Austin, San Antonio, and Houston are the big cities in Texas. Well, Dallas has kind of already hit those really high prices. Austin has really hit that. And Houston is a pretty good market as well. San Antonio is still rising up to the prices where you can still get property at a good price point and still know that there's growth continuing to happen because the population continues to expand. So, it's pretty simple economics. It's not anything too advanced, which, to be candid, is one of the reasons I like real estate. It's not rocket science, right? It's not understanding derivatives and all these crazy calls and puts on stocks and what's happening behind the curtain that's going to manipulate that stock price. And what about the opinion of the country? Are they going to buy Tesla stock? It's like, well, all those can impact the price of a stock. Whereas apartments, it's like, hey, look, every 2 bedroom around here rents for $1,000. If I buy a 2 bedroom apartment complex and most of them are 2 bedrooms, guess what they're going to rent for? $1,000. It's not
Yeah.
rocket science. And as long as I can get people in there every month, they're going to pay that $1,000 in rent. We can split that out according to the business plan.
Right on. Cool. Yeah, I just remembered something I thought about a little bit earlier
Sure.
while you were speaking was when you were talking about I just want to buy things that are actually needed.
Yeah.
What I like to tell people a lot is think of it this way: entire empires have been lost and won, depending on how much real estate they actually had.
Interesting.
And you just want to make sure that you aren't over leveraged and you aren't you got your dots and T's where they need to be.
Does your
Uh,
audience know what over leveraged means? You want to tell them?
yeah. So over leverage means that you got more than you think you got, and your head is a little bit more underwater. Meaning that you have more debt than income coming in. It means that you probably didn't do as much homework as you should have done, and ultimately, it just means that when things go south, they'll go south bad. So it's just about making sure the underwriting is correct, and underwriting means that worst possible case scenario has been taken care of and taken into consideration that you would still be in the green when the worst case scenario actually happens. So I actually wanted to ask also if somebody wanted to, hey Chris, I like his style, I like how he talks, I like how his ideas. If I want to invest money in you, I've got X amount of money. I like Chris. I don't want to do anything. I don't want to be part of like the general team. What do I do?
So the first step is really to reach out. I have a website, amitycashflow.com, A-M as in Mary, I-T-Y, cashflow.com. You can go there, you can sign up on my email list, and you'll start getting emails from me. You can reply, reach out, and we'll jump on a call, talk about your needs and wants, some of your goals. I'd love to understand, I like to understand what my investors are looking for. You know, if an investor comes to me and say, hey, I want to double my money in 6 months, I'll probably tell them to look elsewhere, you know, try and find a different investment that's a little more aggressive than what we're doing. But if someone's starting at zero, you know, they have a lot of education to overcome to before they just start putting money in. If someone comes to me and they told me, I just learned about real estate yesterday, I want to write you a check for 100 grand. My duty as a fiduciary is to say, hey, look, you're probably not in the best space to make that decision, even though you think you are and that you think you understood everything about real estate in one day. So we'll start educating that investor, and I'll start just getting on calls. I'll start sending them all my emails, and they're going to get a slow education. I'll probably suggest a couple of books for them to read, because real estate is, as an investor, is not cheap, right? It's not something I think people hear a lot of times. Oh, no money down, you can go and buy a property and wholesale and do no money down deals and all these slick deals. That is possible if you're a very active real estate investor. If you're a passive real estate investor, what you're doing is cutting a check to buy ownership in a large apartment complex that costs millions of dollars. So checks aren't going to be small, but that way you're actually going to write a check and get some decent returns on that. So if you're going to write a check for that, I need to make sure that they're in a good spot financially and educational, is that a word?
Educationally? Sure,
Educationally.
whatever.
But I want to make sure, you know, that in their finances are set up where they can cut a check for 50 grand or 100 grand. I want to make sure that they have the education to know what they're doing with that check. And then every deal is going to be specific. So once they get on my email list, we have that conversation. I know where they're coming from. Well, they're in a good spot where when I do have an apartment complex comes out and I go, hey, investors, this is our next deal. This is what it looks like. These are the financial projections. This is what I like about the property. This is how we're going to operate the property. Then we're going to set up a time when you can go ahead and ask questions. And then at that point, it's simply investing. You write a check, wire the money, then you become an owner in that apartment complex. That apartment will operate for the next, call it 3 to 7 years. We have a business plan in place, what we're going to do. This is what we're planning on, how we're going to pay out investors, you know, each quarter. And then the apartment's going to operate. We're going to do all the busy work, all the heavy lifting, while that investor gets to go back to their life. Their money is now at work as a co-owner of an apartment complex. And then as that apartment spits off profit, we're going to send them checks every quarter. We're going to send them yearly tax statements that are going to be very beneficial, because as a passive ownership, you typically will get what's called paper losses, but you're going to be making money every quarter. So it's another magical part of real estate is there's incredible tax benefits
Yeah,
that I'm sure you hear a lot of the wealthy people in America own real estate, and there's a reason for that, because they're able to help offset their tax burden. So, yeah,
for
the
sure.
best step is to really reach out either through my website or I mean, my website's going to be the best way that'll connect you to me, and then we'll start that conversation.
For sure. Yeah. You guys can also send a message to me through Facebook, through my phone number if you have it. It's linked to my Facebook. Just to let me know, like, hey, what Chris was saying made a lot of sense to me. Can you connect us? I'll be happy to do something like that. So let's just say an artist has just listened to this and they're like, you know what, Chris speaks like he's speaking to my soul right now. He's saying things that I like to hear. I want to read that book that he was saying that he would recommend. What's the first book that you're like, you know what, that's a great place to start? Go ahead, take care of that. Come back and talk to me when you've taken care of that. What's
Yeah.
something that you would recommend?
So if you're like just starting out and you have not even the headspace yet, oh, I hadn't really thought of investing in real estate. A classic book is Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad, followed by Cash Flow Quadrant. Cash Flow Quadrant is an incredible, incredible book that really clears things up as far as helping you understand where are you in the financial world. Are you an employee that's simply subject to someone else's job they're going to give you, or are you a business owner? Are you an investor full time? Where does your money come from and where does your money go? So those are the two books I would start with. And then if you're looking to understand real estate, generally I recommend Gary Keller's Millionaire Real Estate Investor. And then if you're looking for a more specific book towards apartment investing, a great place to start is a book called Crushing It in Small Apartments. And the author of that is, I have it on my website under resources.
Okay.
And oh man,
I'm dropping these links as you speaking them into the Facebook chat. So
man, it's just happening in real time.
Brian
Brian Murray, I believe, wrote Crushing
Murray.
It. It's a black book with red titles. So actually, and on my website, like I said, I have a whole resources tab that's got a bunch of these books on there, as well as some other mindset books. Um,
Okay,
and
cool.
even more than that, you can start listening to podcasts. Podcasts are great. If you're looking for real estate in general, if you're looking for apartments, if you're looking for business mindset, you can literally Google any of those and they're going to show up. You can find a ton of different ones and see which ones resonate with you.
Yeah.
I have a couple of those listed on my website as well. If you're just getting started in real estate, Bigger Pockets they used to have a um, a website called, or I mean, a podcast, and it was really short. They're like 5 to 7 minutes, and it was kind of like the basics, like Real Estate 101. And I think there was 100 episodes,
Mm-hmm.
and they were 5 to 7 minutes, and it gave you just like what is wholesaling, right? And it just gave 5 to 10 minutes on what wholesaling is, because these terms start getting overwhelming when you're starting out. And then somehow it's hard to find that podcast now. They took it off of like Stitcher and Apple, but I have it listed on my website, so you can
Cool.
find it there.
Sweet, sweet, sweet.
Yeah,
I just linked Bigger Pockets onto the Facebook chat or Facebook comment section. So the way I actually got into real estate is 100% through Bigger Pockets. Like I
uh-huh.
had just graduated from school in acting and performance studies, and I loved the education I got. But almost immediately I was like, uh-oh, like now we got to figure out finances. And then I actually Rich Dad Poor Dad. That one is the first one I knocked out. And then I read 4 Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss, and then actually got Cash Flow Quadrant on my right side right here. And Rich Dad Poor Dad kind of just it's like the algorithm figured me out to a T, and it just sent
Yeah,
me right into Bigger Pockets, and signed up, started learning more and more, realized that I wanted to be a realtor as well, just to get more knowledge. Became a realtor and going on and on. But yeah, the goal eventually is to do large syndication deals like the one you're stuff doing. And
sure. How's it been being a realtor? Do you feel like you have an inside knowledge that your average investor may not have?
uh, yes and no, in that like I have access to the MLS, but that access can be given to once you have a realtor, like as a buyer, you can get access to that through your agent.
Okay,
And I would say that in that way there is, but I wouldn't really say like there's more work to be done than just becoming a realtor.
right.
There's so much more work to be done, and that's something that after I became a realtor, I was like, oh, I could have done other stuff as well, and I was doing those at the same time, and I'm really enjoying being a realtor, and I like doing what I'm doing. But the way that somebody explained it to me once, I was talking to an investor in Mission Viejo, John Holmes, if you know who he is. He was like, I asked him like, do you think I should get my real estate license. It's something that I already considered. My mom at a really young age had been like, you should be an agent. And it kind of just came to fruition. I asked him, I was like, do you think I should be an agent? And he goes, it's just another tool in your tool belt if you end up doing it. And that really resonated with me. I'm a fan of tools and I'm a fan of tool belts. So
Sure.
that's what I did. But if people are interested in investing in real estate, Bigger Pockets is the way to go. There's a lot of great resources. I also linked Michael Blanc's Financial Freedom Real Estate Investor. That's on there. He's got a lot of great information on his website. His book is pretty cheap. His podcast is free. But is there anything else that you want to let my listeners know? Just something that you're like, hey, I'd like to plug this, whatever art project I've got going on.
Um, well, I hope that everyone watching starts somewhere, really. Real estate investing seems very overwhelming. And as an artist, for me, I didn't have a huge financial background. I wasn't in economics. I wasn't an economics major. I mean, I didn't work at a bank. I didn't work as a mortgage broker. I came from the creative side, right? In television and music. So for me, I just started and I started very slow. I didn't feel any pressure to go and buy something the first year. I spent literally years learning real estate from scratch, right? Learning all the terms and the lingo, meeting as many people as I could. I took meetings with anyone that would sit and listen to me. I picked up the phone and called guests of podcasts, and I would just be open-minded and humble. And hey, I'm learning this. Would you mind helping me? And what I learned is that a couple of things. People are very helpful. People like to help others. There's a lot of good in this world, I believe, and I think that especially when it comes to investing, when you have success, you want to help others have success. It's just kind of part of passing it on. And for me, I feel not indebted, but so many people helped me along my path that I'm happy to pass that on as much as I can. Um, so just get started, right? Pick up a book. There's a lot of free resources that don't require money. You can listen to every podcast and get essentially a master's degree in the theory and the knowledge of real estate. You could understand all the terms for free on the internet. You could ask me about everything and I could tell you it for free, right? It's not going to cost you anything. And then there's other things. You can go and you can buy books, you can buy courses, you can attend conferences, you can pay for expensive masterminds and one-on-one like coaching essentially. I didn't do any of those things. I just learned for free, and then I started putting my money into real estate and learning on the job. So everyone's got a different path, but the most important thing is to get started. And if you have an interest, if you're listening to this, jump on my website and message me and I'll help you get started. But just start somewhere. And the other important thing is, man, you got to get in control of your finances, right? A lot of people, especially from the artist perspective like us, you make your money and then no one taught you how to manage your finances. You maybe have a credit card and a debit card and a checking account. That's about it. Well, you better get on top of that too. So learn how to budget, because you got to save money to then invest it and make more money. And a lot of people want to skip that step, or it feels too big and overwhelming. So they just, they push it down the line. They never make it happen. So I would encourage you, if you're watching this, to get in control of your finances, and start learning and ultimately investing in real estate. But in the meantime, man, right now is a tough time in the world. So it's also easy to say all this with magic wands, but I do think right now it's really important to take care of your family. So
For
keep
sure.
your work going as much as you can. And it's a great time to be learning. If you don't have a bunch of money right now, it's a great time to be learning. So when things come back around, the world hopefully spins back to normal a little bit and you feel more secure, then you could be educated enough to make some investments.
Cool. Yeah, I think you said that beautifully. I was going to elaborate, but I'm like, no, he crushed it. One last question,
Sure.
unless anybody has some and they want to toss it in the comment section. You are a drummer. You're in a band. You edit for Amazon and a bunch of other stuff. Shark Week as well, right?
Yeah, I've done
Um,
Shark Week since 2013, 7 years,
wow.
supervising editor. So
Wow. Wow. Okay,
I
so
always forget to talk about Shark Week.
you can't forget about Shark Week, man.
Here's my shark. So this is my home. Hold on. I can't turn my camera. You see all my sharks over there. You can't really see
Oh,
them.
the teeth or
Yeah,
jaws.
yeah. My whole jaw's
Um,
wall.
cool. So okay, so
Sorry, I
you
interrupted you.
no problem. You edit, you play drums, you have a family, you invest in real estate. I'm sure you get this question all the time. How? Like, how do you have the time, man?
Well, one thing is the things you listed are literally the only thing I do. I don't have anything else. So I don't, if I'm hanging out with friends, it's typically a very small select group, or it's going to be like you and I are friends with regards to real estate. But we're going to go and hang out. We'll probably talk about real estate. If I'm at work, we're probably going to talk about real estate over lunch, or be talking about television. If I'm on tour or playing my drums, that's all I'm doing. But then often I'll also combine things. So I've been on tour, no joke, true story. I've had a piece of paper in front of me, and I've been on my phone at sound check in Texas, and I had just driven properties, and I was writing down numbers on my snare drum on a piece of paper.
Oh my God.
I multitask some. So I pretty much I limit it to those things, and I stay pretty hyper focused when I'm doing each thing. So if I have this time, like this is all I'm doing right now. I'm trying not to do anything else. Um, I also pretty much decided, like when I was going to start investing in real estate, I just gave up the notion of free time for a long time, right? My drives, every single drive, anywhere I went, I was listening to a podcast or a book, or I was on the phone. My lunches were no longer just lunches. If I was having a lunch, it was typically an investor meeting, or I was reading a book by myself, or if I was going to go out with colleagues, we were probably going to talk about real estate because they found out what I do, and that's what we're going to talk about. After work, on my way home, I'd either be driving, listening to a podcast or a book, or talking to an investor, or I'd stop at a meetup group and I'd skip dinner with the family. And then when I'm home with my family, and I'm up early with my son and my wife, it's exclusively that time, right? I don't have my phone out around me in the morning. My phone is set aside. So I'm able to give, I guess the short answer is I give 100% of my attention to whatever I'm doing, and I just limit it to those things. So it's not the easiest, I think I definitely, it kind of wears on you having a lot of hats, but I'm also, I guess, a pretty high energy person, and I like what I do. I enjoy real estate. I enjoy television. I enjoy my family. So that makes everything much easier to do. I like people. I like meeting with people and talking about investments. So I don't
Right on.
know. That's it's a lot, I guess, but it's maybe not for everyone,
Sure.
But I think a lot of people also like to sit at home and watch TV at night and spend a couple hours just vegging out. And I just gave that up 7 years ago. I don't have that.
Right on. Well, cool, man. You look smooth doing it. So even if it's wearing on you, you look cool, like a cool cat.
I appreciate
Thank
it.
you so much for doing this. I appreciate you. I appreciate you. I appreciate you. Have a beautiful day, sir.
Thanks, Greg. Take care.
Take care.